What if I told you that a $40 million legacy meant to honor Princess Diana's lifelong devotion to humanity is now at the center of a government-led financial scandal, and that her youngest son, Prince Harry, is the man under fire? In a move as shocking as it is historic, the United Kingdom's Charity Commission has reportedly blocked a massive payout from the Diana Legacy Trust, funds that were expected to flow into the hands of Prince Harry to support his Archewell Foundation and a new slate of global humanitarian projects. But behind the noble mission lies a tangled web of alleged financial mismanagement, blurred ethical lines, and explosive accusations that the Duke of Sussex may have tried to siphon money from his mother's charity into ventures that, critics say, dangerously toe the line between personal enrichment and public service. Sources close to the situation say government auditors flagged what they described as irregular financial activities, alleging that large sums connected to the Diana Legacy Trust were either directly or indirectly routed into projects with murky accounting trails, some of which involved commercial elements including Harry and Meghan's media productions, speaking engagements, and private consultancy ventures. The move has reportedly left Prince Harry furious, blindsided by a government intervention he sees as not only unjust, but as a personal attack on his late mother's legacy. "This was about continuing my mother's mission," Harry is said to have told a confidant. "Now they've turned it into a scandal." But to critics and watchdogs, the outrage is misplaced. They argue that Harry, perhaps blinded by his desire to both preserve his mother's memory and carve out a post-royal identity, allowed ethical boundaries to blur. The result? A looming PR disaster, growing calls for a full forensic audit of Archewell's operations, and an escalating rift not just with the British government, but also with the very public that once viewed Diana's son as the people's prince. And that's just the beginning. In this deep dive, we unravel the full story behind the blocked $40 million payout, the whistleblower reports that lit the fuse, and how a royal son's dream of honoring his mother has turned into a public nightmare, one that could shatter the very foundation of the Sussex brand. Before the headlines, before the accusations and the parliamentary whispers, there was only a mission, a woman, a legacy. The Diana Legacy Trust was born out of heartbreak and hope, established to carry forward the humanitarian light of a princess who touched millions. The world remembers her not just as a royal, but as a relentless advocate for AIDS patients, for landmine victims, for forgotten children. Her touch was real, her compassion disarming, her death catastrophic. After her tragic passing in 1997, the outpouring of global grief gave birth to something more enduring than flowers at Kensington Palace gates. The Diana Legacy Trust was created to embody the very essence of what she stood for: love without pretense, charity without ego, presence without spotlight. It was never meant to be political, never meant to be profitable. It was meant to heal. Millions have poured into the trust over the years, not just from the British public but from all over the world. Philanthropists, corporations, and ordinary citizens drawn in by the timeless image of a princess kneeling beside an emaciated AIDS patient or hugging a leper without hesitation. It was these moments, not palace balls or designer gowns, that made Diana immortal. And so, when Prince Harry emerged as a vocal figure of modern humanitarianism, many believed the torch had been passed to the right hands. With his military background, his invincible mother's heart, and his newly minted Archewell Foundation, Harry was poised to take Diana's legacy into the 21st century. Felt natural, even necessary. But what began as a sacred duty to continue a mother's work is now being investigated as a possible exploitation of it. A former trustee of the Diana Legacy Trust, who spoke under condition of anonymity, shared this sobering insight. "We always believed that if anyone could carry the flame, it was Harry. But a flame can light the world or burn it down." As the UK government freezes the $40 million payout intended to fund his initiatives, the world is now being forced to ask a difficult question. Was this about honoring Diana or monetizing her? And if the answer lies somewhere in between, how do you untangle noble intentions from questionable execution? When Prince Harry launched the Archewell Foundation in 2020, it was marketed as more than just another philanthropic venture. It was a rebirth, a fresh start, a breakaway not just from the British monarchy but from a system he described as toxic, both to him and to the causes he claimed were being overshadowed by royal bureaucracy and press manipulation. With Meghan Markle by his side and the global stage in front of him, Harry's voice grew louder, more personal, more political. But underpinning it all was one thread: Diana. In every speech, every interview, every digital announcement, he invoked his mother's memory, not as a nostalgic token but as a living blueprint. He often claimed that Archewell was, in spirit, a continuation of her unfinished work. "My mother taught me compassion," he said in a widely viewed interview. "She showed me the world's pain without a filter." Archewell is her legacy, reborn in a modern world. Archewell aimed to support mental health, digital responsibility, gender equality, and racial justice. The foundation partnered with organizations around the globe, launched video content, and invested in research, all under the banner of compassion in action, one of Diana's guiding phrases. But that mission was never cheap, and herein lies the heart of today's conflict. According to internal sources, as Archewell expanded its operations into digital platforms, documentary production, and social impact branding, the lines between charity and commerce began to blur. The Diana Legacy Trust was expected to be a pillar of funding and symbolic endorsement. In Harry's vision, the $40 million payout wouldn't just fund a charity. It would be the fuel to amplify his mother's voice into every home, every school, every digital space. But critics argue this vision was too grand, too global, too dependent on brand partnerships and content monetization to remain fully charitable. "He wanted to make Diana go viral," said one former Archewell staffer. "But charity doesn't work like TikTok." What Harry saw as a moral mandate, others now call a financial maneuver. Was his intent to educate and elevate, or to capitalize? The tragic irony? The man trying to honor his mother may have underestimated the scrutiny that comes with invoking her name. It all unraveled quietly at first, just a few irregularities flagged during a routine audit conducted by independent financial watchdogs under the UK Charity Commission. But by the time the reports reached the higher echelons of government oversight, they painted a far more troubling picture. Buried beneath spreadsheets and wire transfer logs was a financial web that seemed to link the Diana Legacy Trust to private commercial operations tied directly to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. One government source, speaking under condition of anonymity, described it bluntly: "There were too many blurred lines. It became impossible to distinguish between what was for public good and what might have served private interests." According to documents leaked to investigative journalists, large sums of charitable funding, some allegedly tagged as Diana Legacy Initiatives, were routed into partnerships and production deals under the Archewell umbrella. These included payments to third-party media consultants, digital branding agencies, and entities tied to content creation contracts with streaming services. The implication: that money originally intended to fund social impact projects, perhaps education in sub-Saharan Africa or women's shelters in the UK, was instead being funneled into brand-building tools for Harry and Meghan's global presence. One flagged instance reportedly involved a six-figure transfer used to underwrite a mental health docuseries later pitched to streaming platforms as a revenue-generating product. None of this is to say Harry pocketed the money or acted with overt malice. In fact, those close to him claim he remained deeply invested in ensuring transparency. But what he may have failed to grasp, say experts, is that transparency is not the same as separation. Dr. Elaine Marchant, a governance specialist and professor of nonprofit law at Cambridge University, explains, even if the intention is noble, the appearance of impropriety can be just as damaging as an actual violation. When public money or public trust is in play, you have to operate with clean hands and clear books. Archewell, it seems, may have had neither. The financial maze that once looked like strategic partnerships now appears, to regulators, dangerously close to self-dealing. And in the world of charities, especially those carrying a royal seal, there are few accusations more explosive. When the Charity Commission of the United Kingdom formally froze the $40 million Diana Legacy Trust payout earmarked for Archewell-linked initiatives, it sent shockwaves through the royal and philanthropic communities. To many, it was a moment of reckoning. Not just for Prince Harry, but for the entire idea of legacy-based philanthropy wrapped in personal branding. The decision wasn't made lightly. According to internal memos reviewed by legal analysts, the commission cited concerns over the financial stewardship of earmarked funds and flagged potential misalignments between charitable intent and fund deployment. In simpler terms, the money wasn't necessarily being used how it was promised to be used. The Charity Commission's action falls under its statutory powers to intervene when a charitable trust is believed to be at risk of mismanagement or when public confidence in the charity could be damaged. In a written statement, a commission spokesperson said, "All charitable trusts are subject to the same laws, whether managed by civilians or members of the royal family. The public expects the highest standards of transparency, especially when donations are linked to high-profile individuals." The block didn't just stop the funds. It opened the door to a full financial investigation. A special audit task force was assembled to review how previously disbursed funds connected to Diana's legacy were used in tandem with Archewell's evolving ventures. Notably, the investigation also includes overseas transactions involving U.S.-based Archewell affiliates, further complicating jurisdiction and legal oversight. Parliamentarians from both major parties publicly supported the Commission's actions. One MP from the Treasury Select Committee, while avoiding naming Prince Harry directly, made a pointed statement during a session. Legacy cannot become a loophole. Royal blood does not exempt anyone from the legal and ethical frameworks that protect charitable giving in this country. Legal experts suggest the freeze could last months, or even longer, while the Commission combs through layers of financial documentation. In the meantime, Archewell's operations in the UK are effectively stalled, pending clarification and potential restructuring of its funding sources. For Harry, who saw the payout not as charity but as a continuation of his mother's sole work, the government blockade feels more like betrayal. But for regulators and public watchdogs, it's a necessary stand to protect public trust. The news hit Prince Harry like a freight train. By the time reports of the UK government's intervention reached his Montecito estate, the damage had already rippled across international media. Headlines screamed betrayal. Social feeds flooded with outrage. And inside the walls of his California mansion, sources close to the Duke say Harry was livid. "This is a disgrace," he reportedly fumed to a close friend via encrypted text. "They're trying to kill what's left of my mother's memory, and they're using bureaucracy to do it." Multiple insider accounts suggest that Harry initially believed the block was politically motivated. He suspected, according to one confidant, that certain factions within the UK establishment were eager to punish him, not just for stepping away from royal duties, but for airing the monarchy's dirty laundry in high-profile interviews and documentaries. To Harry, this was less about finances and more about control. His fury wasn't limited to whispers either. Behind closed doors, he began rallying legal advisors, public relations strategists, and philanthropic partners. Some sources claim he even considered flying to London to challenge the decision face-to-face, a bold move that would have marked his most high-profile return to the UK since the Queen's funeral. But others advised caution. Meghan Markle, reportedly present when the news broke, urged Harry to stay calm, stay focused, according to a staffer close to Archewell. She reminded him that public opinion was fickle and that emotional outbursts could shift the narrative in damaging ways. Still, even she was said to be shaken by the implications. "This wasn't just about Harry," the staffer explained. "This was about Archewell's future, about their entire brand, about the one thing they thought was untouchable, Diana's memory." In the days that followed, Harry released a carefully worded statement through Archewell's communications team. It was polished, composed, but carried a heavy emotional undertone. "We remain committed to my mother's legacy," the statement read. "We will fully cooperate with the Commission's review, but we stand firm in our mission to bring compassion and integrity to every project funded in her name." Still, behind the professional facade, sources say Harry felt deeply betrayed, not just by the system but by a country he once called home.